Officer Miller violently shoves Andrew against the diner counter, snapping cold steel handcuffs around the wrists of the active-duty Navy SEAL. "You picked the wrong town to act crazy in," the arrogant cop sneers, entirely ignoring the massive German Shepherd sitting rigidly just 3 feet away. Max does not bark. He does not growl. The highly trained military dog simply stares unblinking at the gray plastic trash bin by the exit, frozen in a terrifying, silent posture. The oblivious police officer thinks he just took down a homeless drifter, completely unaware that his stubborn ego is about to ignite a deadly crisis that will leave everyone in the crowded restaurant fighting for their lives. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments which country you are watching from, and if you love stories that melt your heart, please subscribe to support our channel. Andrew opened the heavy glass door of the Sunshine Diner. The blast of cold air conditioning fought against the thick Florida humidity. He stepped inside. Max followed right beside him. The German Shepherd wore a tan service dog vest over his thick black and tan coat. Max stayed glued to Andrew's left leg. Andrew scanned the room. He did this out of habit. A decade in the Navy SEALs hardwired this behavior into his brain. He noted the 2 main exits. He noted the kitchen doors swinging open and shut. He noted the large glass windows facing the busy highway outside. The diner buzzed with loud conversations. Plates clattered against wooden tables. Silverware scraped against porcelain plates. The smell of frying bacon, sweet syrup, and old coffee hung heavily in the air. Andrew guided Max through the narrow aisles. He kept his posture straight but relaxed. He wore faded blue jeans, a fitted olive green t-shirt, and scuffed combat boots. His face bore a short, rough beard. He looked like a man who spent his life outdoors. People stared as they walked by. A large dog inside a restaurant always drew attention. A mother pulled her young child closer to her booth. An older man in a trucker hat nodded with respect at the service vest. Andrew ignored both reactions. He focused on finding a secure spot. He found a small, empty table in the far back corner. This spot gave him a clear view of the entire room and put a solid wall behind his back. "Under," Andrew commanded softly. Max immediately slid under the small wooden table. The dog rested his heavy head on his front paws. He did not pant. He did not look around. Max waited for the next command. He behaved like a disciplined soldier. A waitress walked over to their table. She wore a bright pink uniform and a plastic name tag that read Cindy. Cindy looked to be in her late 40s. She had tired eyes but offered a polite, genuine smile. She held a steaming pot of coffee in her right hand. "Morning, sir. Would you like some coffee?" Cindy asked. She glanced down at Max. She did not look upset, just curious. "Yes, please." "Black," Andrew replied, "and a plate of scrambled eggs with toast." "Coming right up," Cindy said. She poured the dark liquid into a thick ceramic mug on the table. "He is very well behaved. He has good training," Andrew said. Cindy walked away to serve another table. Andrew wrapped his hands around the warm mug. He took a slow sip. The coffee tasted bitter, but he needed the caffeine. He had driven through the night. His leave started yesterday, and he just wanted to reach his quiet cabin near the coast. People often mistake the quietness of a trained soldier for exhaustion, failing to realize it is simply the conservation of energy before a storm. Andrew sat perfectly still. He watched the flow of the diner. A family of 4 argued over pancakes. 2 teenagers laughed over a shared milkshake. A businessman tapped loudly on his laptop near the front counter. Everything appeared normal. Everything felt completely safe. 10 minutes passed. Cindy brought the plate of eggs and toast. Andrew ate quickly. He did not waste time looking at his phone. He simply ate and watched the room. Max remained completely still under the table. The dog seemed asleep to anyone else, but Andrew knew better. Then, something changed. Max shifted his weight. The dog lifted his head from his paws. His ears swiveled forward, locking onto a specific direction. Andrew stopped chewing. He placed his metal fork down on the plate. He knew Max. He knew every tiny movement his canine partner made. This was not a random shift to get comfortable. This was a deliberate alert. Max flared his nostrils. He took in deep, rapid sniffs of the air. The dog stood up. He bumped his back against the underside of the small table. "What is it, buddy?" Andrew whispered. Max stepped out from under the table. He stood beside Andrew's chair. The dog's body went completely rigid. His tail dropped straight down, his eyes fixed on the front of the diner. Max pulled slightly against the leather leash, looped around Andrew's wrist. Andrew looked toward the front. He saw the cash register. He saw a small line of customers waiting to pay their bills. He saw a large, gray plastic trash can sitting near the main exit doors. Max focused entirely on that specific trash can. The dog whined. It was a very low, very specific sound. Andrew felt his heart rate increase. Max served as a multi-purpose canine in the military. He tracked targets. He protected his handler. He also detected explosives. That specific whine meant only one thing in their rigorous training. Max smelled a dangerous chemical compound that absolutely did not belong in a civilian diner. "Hold!" Andrew commanded. Max stopped pulling, but he did not break his intense stare. The dog's nose twitched constantly. The scent grew stronger to him. Andrew quickly analyzed the situation. He could be wrong. It could be strong cleaning chemicals. It could be something harmless discarded in the trash by a passing worker. But a SEAL never ignored his dog's alert. The cost of ignoring an alert was too high. He needed to investigate immediately. Andrew reached into his pocket. He pulled out a $20 bill and dropped it on the table. He stood up. He kept a firm grip on the leash. "Let us go check," Andrew said softly. He stepped out from the corner booth. Max immediately took the lead. The dog did not run. He walked with aggressive purpose. He navigated through the crowded aisles. He ignored the strong smell of food on the tables. He ignored a piece of dropped sausage on the tiled floor. Max only cared about the invisible trail in the air. People noticed the large dog moving through the dining room. Conversations paused. A few patrons shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Andrew kept his eyes locked on the trash can. He needed to get closer to confirm Max's suspicion. They reached the front area. The line of customers at the cash register parted slightly as the large German Shepherd approached. Max stopped exactly 3 feet away from the gray trash can. The dog shoved his nose forward. He took one final deep sniff. Then, Max looked back at Andrew. The dog's eyes communicated a clear message. The threat was real. The threat was right here. Andrew tightened his grip on the leash. He needed to act, but he needed to avoid panic. He looked around the immediate area. The cashier counted change. A family waited for a table. He noted the man in the business suit tapping his foot impatiently. He noted the small child playing with a toy car on the floor nearby. The sheer number of people within the blast radius made his stomach tighten. None of them knew what sat inside that plastic bin. Andrew knelt beside Max. He ran a hand along the dog's spine. The fur stood up slightly. Max remained completely focused. "Good boy," Andrew breathed. He needed to look inside the bin without triggering anything. He needed to verify the source before causing mass hysteria. But before he could even lean forward, heavy footsteps approached from his right. Someone walked toward them with fast, angry strides. The situation was about to become much more complicated. Andrew stood up slowly, keeping Max close to his side. The quiet diner atmosphere vanished for him. The mission had officially started. Andrew stood up from the corner booth. He kept his posture relaxed but his muscles tight. He held the thick leather leash firmly in his right hand. Max stood frozen. The German Shepherd's nose pointed directly at the gray plastic trash bin near the main exit. "Easy, Max," Andrew whispered. He needed to close the distance. He needed to visually inspect the bin without causing a panic. He took a step forward. Max moved with him. They walked down the center aisle of the diner. The noise of clattering plates and loud conversations began to fade. People noticed the large dog stepping out from the shadows. A man in a business suit stopped chewing his food. A group of teenagers pointed at Max. A mother pulled her purse closer to her chest. People often judge a situation entirely on visual assumptions, failing to recognize the silent realities unfolding right in front of them. To the customers in the Sunshine Diner, Andrew looked like a homeless drifter causing trouble. They saw faded jeans, a dusty shirt, and a large, intimidating animal. They did not see a highly trained Navy SEAL and a decorated military working dog. Andrew ignored the stares. He focused on his breathing. He kept his eyes locked on the target area. The cash register area was crowded. 5 people waited in line to pay their bills. The gray trash bin sat just to the right of the exit doors. It was a large, heavy plastic container with a swinging lid. Max pulled slightly. The scent grew stronger. The dog's tail remained stiff and pointing straight down. Andrew stopped exactly 2 feet away from the bin. He commanded Max to sit. Max sat immediately, but kept his nose elevated. Andrew leaned forward slightly. He looked at the exterior of the bin. He saw nothing unusual. He needed to look inside, but he could not just start digging through a public trash can. That would certainly cause a panic. Before Andrew could figure out his next move, a loud voice cut through the diner. "Excuse me, sir? You cannot have that animal over here." Andrew turned his head. A man walked quickly toward him from behind the front counter. This was the diner manager. His plastic name tag read, Mr. Henderson. Henderson looked to be in his early 50s. He had a receding hairline, a tight red tie, and sweat forming on his forehead. He wore a crisp, white button-down shirt tucked tightly into black slacks. He looked stressed and annoyed. "He is a service dog," Andrew stated calmly. He did not raise his voice. He kept his tone flat and professional. Henderson stopped a few feet away. He crossed his arms over his chest. He looked Andrew up and down, his eyes lingering on the scuffed combat boots and the faded green t-shirt. He clearly did not believe Andrew. "I do not care what kind of dog he is," Henderson said loudly. His voice carried across the silent diner. "He is too big, and he is bothering my customers. You are blocking the exit. Take him back to your table or leave my restaurant." The people waiting in line shifted uncomfortably. A few patrons at the nearby tables stopped eating to watch the confrontation. The air grew tense. "Sir, I am not trying to cause a problem," Andrew said. He kept his hands visible. He did not make any sudden movements. "My dog is trained to detect specific threats. He is alerting to something in this trash bin." Henderson let out a sharp laugh. It was a sound of pure disbelief and irritation. "Threats? In my trash bin?" Henderson mocked. "What are you talking about? It is a trash can. People throw away half-eaten burgers and empty sugar packets. There are no threats in my diner." "You are making people uncomfortable. I understand your concern," Andrew replied smoothly. "But I need you to listen to me. He is a certified military working dog. He does not alert without a reason. We need to clear this area and check the bin." The manager's face turned red. The word military seemed to anger him more. He probably thought Andrew was a crazy person making up stories to justify his strange behavior. "Listen here, buddy." Henderson pointed a thick finger at Andrew. "I run a respectable family establishment. I do not have time for crazy conspiracy theories. You look like you belong sleeping under a bridge, not bringing a wild animal into my dining room." Andrew felt a flash of anger, but his SEAL training quickly pushed it down. Emotion clouded judgment. He needed absolute clarity right now. He looked down at Max. Max remained seated, still staring intently at the plastic bin. The dog ignored the yelling man completely. "I will not leave until I am sure this area is safe," Andrew said. His voice dropped an octave. It held a firm, unyielding tone. The patrons in the diner started whispering. Some reached for their phones. "He is crazy," one woman whispered loudly to her husband. "Someone should do something," a man in a booth added. Henderson saw the reactions of his customers. He felt his authority being challenged in his own restaurant. He dropped his arms and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a black smartphone. "Fine," Henderson snapped. "You want to play games? We will play games. I am not dealing with a vagrant and his mutt. I am calling the police." Andrew did not flinch. He actually felt a small wave of relief. The police would have resources. The police could call in a bomb squad. The police could clear the diner safely. "Call them," Andrew said evenly. "Tell them to send someone who knows how to handle a potential explosive threat." Henderson paused for a second, his thumb hovering over his phone screen. He stared at Andrew, searching for a sign of a joke. He found nothing but cold, serious determination in Andrew's eyes. Henderson shook his head. He dialed the numbers aggressively. "Yes? Hello? Dispatch?" Henderson spoke loudly into the phone. "This is the manager at the Sunshine Diner on Route 4. I need officers down here immediately. I have a trespasser. He refuses to leave. He is acting erratic. He smells bad, and he brought a dangerous dog into my restaurant. Yes, he is harassing my customers." Andrew listened to the lies. He did not correct the manager. Arguing would only escalate the situation further. He focused his attention back on the trash bin. He calculated the blast radius in his head. If an improvised explosive device sat inside that plastic shell, the shrapnel would tear through the front windows and kill dozens of people instantly. "They are on their way," Henderson announced, sliding the phone back into his pocket. He puffed out his chest. "You are going to regret coming in here." Andrew stood his ground. He held Max's leash. He waited for the flashing lights. He knew the real danger sat silently in the trash, not with the angry manager standing before him. The red and blue lights reflected off the glass windows of the Sunshine Diner. The loud wail of a police siren pierced the humid Florida air. The noise stopped abruptly as a white patrol car parked right near the front entrance. Officer Miller stepped out of the vehicle. He was a tall, heavily built man in his early 30s with a shaved head and a tightly fitted dark blue uniform. His black utility belt creaked as he walked. He carried himself with an aggressive swagger. He adjusted his heavy-duty belt and pushed open the diner doors. The bell above the door chimed. The noisy diner instantly fell completely silent. Every customer stopped talking. Every fork stopped clinking against porcelain plates. The tension in the room thickened immediately. Mr. Henderson practically ran toward the officer. The manager pointed a shaking finger directly at Andrew. "Officer, thank goodness you are here," Henderson said loudly. "That is the man. He refuses to leave my property. He brought that massive dog inside, and he is scaring my customers." Officer Miller did not scan the room. He did not look at the exits. He did not assess the overall environment. Andrew noticed this immediately. A trained operator always checks the perimeter first. Miller only focused on the target Henderson pointed out. This showed poor tactical training. Miller operated on ego rather than situational awareness. Miller walked down the aisle. He stopped a few feet away from Andrew. He looked at Andrew with clear disgust. He saw the faded jeans, the dusty combat boots, and the rough beard. He made an instant judgment. "All right, buddy," Miller said. His voice sounded deep and commanding. "Fun time is over. Take your mutt and step outside right now." Andrew stood his ground. He kept his feet shoulder-width apart. He maintained a balanced stance. Max stood right beside him, nose still pointing toward the gray plastic trash bin. "Officer," Andrew spoke in a calm, measured tone, "I am not looking for trouble. My dog is a certified service animal. He is a trained military working dog. He is currently alerting to a serious threat inside this specific trash bin. We need to evacuate this building and call a bomb squad." Miller let out a loud, mocking snort. He looked at Henderson, then back to Andrew. "A bomb squad?" Miller laughed harshly. "Are you out of your mind? You look like you just crawled out of a swamp. I am not calling a bomb squad for a pile of garbage." "I am advising you to take this seriously," Andrew said. He did not raise his voice, but his tone hardened. "My dog detects explosive chemical compounds. He does not make mistakes. Several customers in the booths pulled out their cell phones. They started recording the interaction. The small glowing screens multiplied across the dark room. Miller noticed the cameras. He stood up straighter. He wanted to look completely in control. He wanted to look tough for the audience. "I do not care what your dog detects," Miller ordered. "You are trespassing. The manager wants you gone. You are going to walk out that door right now, or I will physically throw you out." "I cannot let anyone near this bin," Andrew replied. "If there is a device in there, any sudden movement or radio transmission could trigger it. We need to clear the area." Miller's face turned a dark shade of red. He stepped closer. He invaded Andrew's personal space. The officer tried to use his size to intimidate Andrew. It did not work. Andrew had faced armed insurgents and heavily trained killers. An arrogant local cop did not frighten him. "Listen to me, you homeless piece of trash," Miller growled. "You do not give me orders. I give the orders here. I am the law. You are going to show me your identification right now. Then you are going to take that stupid dog and leave." "My identification is in my back pocket," Andrew said slowly. He kept his hands perfectly still at his sides. He held the leather leash in his right hand. "But I will not reach for it. I am not making any sudden movements." "You are refusing to identify yourself?" Miller asked loudly. He wanted the recording phones to hear him clearly. "You are refusing a lawful order?" "I am trying to keep everyone in this room alive," Andrew stated. Miller lost his temper completely. He hated being ignored. He hated when people did not cower in front of his badge. He reached his right hand down and rested it on the handle of his service weapon. It was an unnecessary and dangerous escalation. "Move! Now!" Miller demanded. Max sensed the rising hostility. The German Shepherd felt the sudden spike in tension from the man in the uniform. Max did not bark. Instead, a low, vibrating growl rumbled deep inside the dog's chest. It was a warning sound. The dog positioned himself slightly in front of Andrew's leg, putting his body between his handler and the aggressive officer. Miller jumped back slightly at the sound of the growl. Fear flashed across his face for a split second, quickly replaced by intense anger. "Control your animal!" Miller shouted. He unclipped the retention strap on his holster. "If that dog lunges at me, I will shoot it right here on the floor. Do you understand me?" The customers gasped. The mother near the front grabbed her child and pulled him under their table. The diner felt like a powder keg waiting for a single spark. Andrew kept his eyes locked on Miller. He calculated the distance between Miller's hand and the gun. He calculated how quickly he could disarm the officer if necessary. But attacking a police officer would destroy everything. It would compromise the mission. It would compromise Max. "He will not attack unless you attack me," Andrew said softly. "But you need to step back. You are making a terrible mistake." "The only mistake is you walking into my town," Miller spat back. The officer reached out his left hand, aiming to grab Andrew's shoulder and physically pull him away from the trash bin. Andrew did not flinch. He prepared himself for the physical contact. He knew what was coming next. Miller's fingers clamped down hard on the fabric of Andrew's green t-shirt. The officer yanked violently. He expected Andrew to stumble forward off balance. Andrew did not move a single inch. His combat boots remained firmly planted on the tiled floor. His core muscles locked tight. It felt to Miller like pulling against a solid brick wall. "I said move," Miller yelled, his voice cracking slightly with frustration. "I am not leaving this spot until a professional team clears that bin," Andrew repeated. His voice remained a calm island in the middle of a screaming storm. Max growled louder. The sound echoed in the quiet gaps between Miller's shouting. The dog showed a sliver of sharp white teeth. The standoff reached a breaking point. The officer stood, with his hand hovering over a deadly weapon, completely blind to the actual bomb sitting just 3 feet away. Andrew stood between the two threats, holding the line with silent resolve. Miller glared at Andrew. The diner felt suffocating. The air conditioning could not compete with the heat of the confrontation. Andrew kept his hands open and visible. He needed to de-escalate the situation, but he could not abandon his post. "Officer Miller," Andrew said. He read the silver name tag on the dark uniform. "I am telling you for the final time, do not step closer to that bin. We need to clear this room." "You are done giving orders," Miller snapped. The crowd murmured loudly. A man in the back booth yelled for Andrew to just listen to the police. A woman closer to the front told the officer to leave the poor man and his dog alone. A waitress dropped a spoon. The metal clattered loudly against the tiled floor, making everyone jump. Fear often makes people choose the loudest authority over the quietest truth. The patrons wanted a quick resolution to their discomfort. They remained entirely unaware that a much larger threat sat just feet away. Miller stepped forward. He closed the remaining distance in one aggressive stride. He reached out and grabbed Andrew by the right shoulder. His grip felt tight and unforgiving. Andrew had a choice to make in a fraction of a second. He could easily break the hold. He could drop the officer to the floor before Miller even realized what happened. But a physical struggle carried too much risk. A stray bullet, a heavy fall against the trash bin, or a sudden panic from the crowd could all trigger the explosive device. Andrew chose compliance over combat. He allowed his body to go slack. "Turn around," Miller barked. Miller shoved Andrew forward. Andrew stumbled slightly, but caught his balance. He allowed the officer to push him against the edge of the wooden cash register counter. The hard wood pressed sharply into his ribs. "Mr. Henderson, the diner manager, took a quick step back and watched with a smug expression on his sweaty face. "Put your hands behind your back," Miller ordered. Andrew brought his hands together behind his waist. He did not resist. He kept his grip on the leather leash loose. He ensured he did not pull Max. Miller grabbed Andrew's right wrist. The officer twisted it upward with unnecessary force. The metal handcuffs from his belt clinked loudly. The sound cut through the murmurs of the crowd. Andrew felt the cold steel bite into his skin. Click, click. The ratchets tightened securely. Miller grabbed the left wrist, pulling it back to meet the right. Click, click. He made sure they pinched tight, testing the chain between them. "You are under arrest," Miller declared loudly. He made sure the entire diner heard him. Resisting an officer, trespassing, and creating a public disturbance. Andrew stood facing the counter. His hands were bound behind his back. He turned his head slightly to check on his dog. Max stood rigid. The German shepherd's eyes darted between the officer and Andrew. The low growl vibrated steadily again in the dog's chest. Max did not understand why his handler allowed this physical attack. The dog waited for a command to strike. "Max, hold," Andrew said firmly. The command echoed in the quiet diner. Max stopped growling, but his muscles remained coiled like tight springs. Miller shoved Andrew's shoulder again. He pushed him flush against the counter. "Shut up," Miller said. "You do not speak unless I ask you a question." Andrew ignored the command. "Officer, you need to check my back pocket. Look at my identification. Look at the dog's credentials. You are making a critical error." Miller laughed. He patted Andrew down roughly. He found the wallet in the back pocket of the faded jeans. He pulled it out and flipped it open. He glanced at the Florida driver license. He barely looked at the military ID tucked behind it. He saw exactly what he wanted to see. He saw a scruffy guy with no fixed address causing trouble. "Andrew." Miller read the first name mockingly. "Well, Andrew, you picked the wrong town to act crazy in." Miller tossed the wallet onto the counter next to the cash register. He reached for the black radio on his shoulder. "Dispatch, this is Unit 4. Miller spoke into the radio. "I have one male suspect in custody at the Sunshine Diner. Situation is under control. I need animal control down here immediately. The suspect has a large, aggressive dog on the premises." The radio crackled with static. "Copy that, Unit 4. Animal control is notified. ETA is 15 minutes. Andrew felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Animal control would try to take Max by force. Max would defend himself and his handler. The situation would devolve into chaos, right next to the explosive device. "You cannot let them take the dog," Andrew said. His voice carried a new urgency. "He is federal property. He is a trained asset. If someone tries to catch him with a pole, he will react." "That sounds like his problem," Miller sneered. "And yours." Henderson stepped forward, wiping his forehead with a napkin. "Thank you, officer. This guy is completely unhinged. He kept talking about bombs in my trash can." Miller shook his head. "Just another crazy person looking for attention. Do not worry, Mr. Henderson. We will get him out of your hair." Andrew looked at the faces in the crowd. He saw curiosity. He saw judgment. He did not see understanding. He needed to change tactics. Trying to reason with Miller clearly failed. The officer operated entirely on ego and blind authority. "Listen to me very carefully," Andrew said softly. He directed his words entirely to Miller. "When that bomb squad finally gets here, and they find what is in that bin, you are going to have to explain why you ignored a direct warning and endangered 50 civilian lives." Miller scoffed. A tiny flicker of doubt crossed his eyes, but he quickly masked it with more anger. He grabbed Andrew by the arm and yanked him backward. "We are going to my car," Miller said. "Move." Andrew planted his feet. He refused to step away from the immediate area. The trash bin sat exactly 3 feet to his right. He needed to keep his eyes on it. "I am not moving," Andrew stated. Miller gritted his teeth. His face grew redder with exertion and embarrassment. He pulled harder on Andrew's arm. He tried to force him toward the door. Andrew used his core strength and low center of gravity to remain completely stationary. He weighed nearly 200 pounds of solid muscle. Miller struggled to move him even an inch. He pushed his knee into the back of Andrew's leg. Andrew merely shifted his weight, absorbing the blow without buckling. "I said walk," Miller shouted. Spit flew from his lips. Andrew kept his eyes fixed on the gray plastic bin. The smell of cheap diner coffee and frying grease suddenly felt sickening. He thought about the blast radius. He calculated the structural integrity of the front windows. Everything pointed to maximum casualties. He could not let Miller win this physical contest. Moving away meant losing visual control of the threat. It meant someone else might walk up and throw something away, detonating the device. He had to hold the line right here. Max stood perfectly still beside him, waiting. The dog's loyalty was absolute. The metal cuffs pinched Andrew's wrists, but he ignored the pain. The real agony would come if he failed his duty today. The standoff continued, a silent war of wills next to a hidden disaster. The cold steel of the handcuffs dug deeply into Andrew's wrists. He felt the jagged edges of the metal locking mechanism pinch his skin with every slight movement. Officer Miller kept a heavy hand pressed hard into the center of Andrew's back, forcing him against the wooden counter. The officer breathed heavily, adrenaline pumping through his system after securing what he believed was a dangerous suspect. Andrew did not fight back. He allowed his muscles to relax completely. True discipline rarely looks like aggression. It often looks like perfect stillness in the middle of a chaotic storm. Andrew knew that struggling against a police officer would only validate Miller's false narrative. It would also distract from the lethal threat sitting silently inside the gray plastic trash bin. "Not so tough now, are you?" Miller taunted. The officer stepped back slightly but kept a tight grip on the steel chain connecting the cuffs. "You come into this town, you scare these good people, and you refuse a lawful order. You are going to spend a long time in a cell." Andrew ignored the harsh words. He did not look at the officer. He did not look at the manager, Mr. Henderson, who stood nearby with a highly satisfied smirk on his face. Andrew focused his attention entirely on Max. The diner remained quiet, save for the nervous whispers of the patrons. Everyone watched the large German shepherd. Max stood near the edge of the front counter. The dog's thick coat bristled along his spine. His amber eyes locked onto Officer Miller with intense focus. A low, continuous rumble vibrated deep inside the dog's throat. The sound was purely primal. It carried a very clear warning. If the officer harmed his handler, the dog would strike with lethal force. A woman in the front booth covered her mouth with both hands. A man holding a white coffee cup took 2 fast steps backward. They all expected the large animal to lunge. They expected immediate violence. Andrew needed to give Max a new directive right now. The current situation confused the highly trained dog. His primary handler was physically restrained by an aggressive individual. Max's instinct screamed at him to protect, but a protective bite against law enforcement would result in the dog being shot. Andrew could not let that happen to his partner. He also needed Max to maintain a visual watch over the explosive device. Andrew shifted his weight carefully. He turned his head slowly to establish direct eye contact with Max. He needed the dog to snap out of his protective instinct and return to operational mode. Andrew twisted his wrists slightly inside the tight metal rings. He extended his index and middle fingers, pressing them firmly together while folding the others. It was a very subtle hand signal, nearly invisible to the untrained eyes in the diner, but Max caught the small movement instantly. Andrew then took a short, sharp breath and let out a specific, high-pitched whistle. It was not a loud noise. It sounded exactly like the short chirp of a bird. The effect on Max was instantaneous and profound. The low growl stopped immediately. The bristled fur on Max's back smoothed down flat against his skin. The dog broke eye contact with Officer Miller without any hesitation. Max turned his entire body away from the aggressive cop and focused solely on the gray trash bin. Max took 2 deliberate, silent steps toward the plastic container. He moved until his dark nose was exactly 6 inches from the outer rim of the bin. Then the dog sat down heavily. His back legs folded neatly beneath him. His front legs locked straight and firm. He dropped his tail flat against the tiled floor. Max froze completely. He looked like a statue carved from dark stone. He did not pant. He did not blink. He did not shift his weight even a fraction of an inch. He simply stared directly at the hidden source of the explosive scent. Miller laughed loudly. The sound echoed awkwardly in the tense dining room. "Is that supposed to mean something?" Miller asked. He tugged sharply on the handcuff chain, forcing Andrew to stand up straighter. "Your dog gave up just like you did. He knows who is in charge here." Andrew remained silent. He kept his eyes locked on Max. The dog held the rigid position perfectly. "I asked you a direct question," Miller demanded. He stepped directly into Andrew's line of sight, blocking his view of the dog. "What is the mutt doing?" "He is doing his job," Andrew replied quietly. "His job is sitting next to the garbage?" Henderson asked loudly from behind the counter. The manager shook his head in disgust. "You military types are all crazy. Just get him out of my diner." Miller grabbed Andrew's upper arm with a bruising grip. "We are walking out the front door, right now. When animal control gets here, they can deal with the dog. If you force me outside, you leave these innocent people in extreme danger," Andrew said. His voice remained steady, completely devoid of panic or anger. He stated it as a simple, undeniable fact. "The only danger in my town is you," Miller retorted. The officer pushed Andrew toward the exit doors. They had to walk right past the trash bin. Andrew moved his feet as slowly as possible. He dragged his heavy combat boots against the tiles to create friction. He needed to buy precious time. He needed someone in the crowd to recognize what was actually happening. He knew the general public did not understand military working dog protocols, but Florida had a very large population of veterans. He hoped someone in the diner had served in the armed forces. As they walked past the bin, Max did not move a single muscle. The dog ignored his handler being forcefully pushed away. This level of extreme discipline was rare. Most trained dogs would break position to follow their owner. Max remained firmly rooted to the spot. His rigorous training overrode his basic instincts. He had found a bomb. He would never leave it until released by a specific command. A young waiter holding a plastic tray of dirty glasses tried to squeeze past them to reach the kitchen doors. He stepped far too close to the trash bin. Max did not bark. He did not snap. He simply let out one sharp, loud exhale through his nose. The waiter jumped back in total surprise, nearly dropping his heavy tray on the floor. "Hey, keep that thing away from me!" the waiter yelled. "He will not bite you," Andrew said over his shoulder. "But you need to step away from that bin. Everyone in this room needs to step away." "Shut up!" Miller yelled angrily. He shoved Andrew much harder toward the double glass doors. Andrew saw the white patrol car parked right outside. He saw the highway traffic moving quickly in the distance. Time was running out fast. If the device had a timer, every single second mattered immensely. If it was remote detonated, the bomber could be watching them from the parking lot right now. Andrew stopped walking entirely. He planted his boots firmly just inside the doorway. "Keep moving," Miller grunted, pushing his full body weight against Andrew's broad back. Andrew did not budge. He turned his head and looked back into the quiet diner. The room was full of completely unaware people. Max maintained his rigid sit, waiting for the world to notice his silent warning. Officer Miller continued to push Andrew toward the front doors. Andrew dragged his heavy combat boots against the tiles. He tried to slow their momentum. He needed to keep his eyes on the gray plastic trash bin. Max remained perfectly still near the counter. The dog sat in rigid obedience. He ignored the scuffle happening just a few feet away. The diner patrons watched the scene with nervous energy. They wanted the disturbance to end so they could return to their normal routines. A man sat in a booth near the center of the restaurant. His name was Thomas. Thomas was 70 years old. He had neat white hair and a weathered face. He wore a faded red cap with the letters USMC stitched in faded gold thread. He wore a simple blue plaid shirt. His thick hands bore the scars of decades of hard work. Thomas ate his scrambled eggs slowly. He watched the commotion unfold. He had served in the Marine Corps during the Vietnam War. He had handled working dogs during his combat deployments. Thomas looked past the struggling police officer. He focused entirely on the large German Shepherd. He observed the dog's specific posture. He noticed the locked front legs. He noticed the flat tail pressing against the floor. He noticed the intense, unblinking stare directed squarely at the gray trash bin. He noticed the complete absence of typical canine behavior. The dog did not pant. The dog did not scratch. The dog acted like a coiled spring locked in place. People often overlook the extraordinary when it hides in plain sight, assuming the world operates strictly within the boundaries of their daily routines. But those trained to survive chaos recognize the silent alarms immediately. Thomas stopped chewing. He dropped his metal fork. It hit the ceramic plate with a sharp clink. The sound got lost in the noise of Officer Miller shouting orders at Andrew. But Thomas did not care about the noisy officer. He stood up abruptly. His old knees popped slightly, but he ignored the ache. He slid out of the booth and stepped into the main aisle. "Hold on a minute," Thomas yelled. His voice was incredibly loud. It carried the heavy weight of a former military drill instructor. It cut through the diner noise completely. It demanded absolute attention. Miller stopped pushing Andrew. The officer turned his head. He looked highly annoyed. "Sit back down, old man. I am handling this suspect." Thomas ignored the arrogant officer entirely. He pointed a thick, calloused finger directly at Max. "What is that dog doing?" "The dog is a dangerous menace." Henderson, the diner manager, chimed in from behind the counter. "It belongs outside on the street." "Shut your mouth," Thomas snapped at Henderson without looking at him. Thomas took a careful step closer to the front. He deliberately kept a wide distance from the trash bin area. He looked at Andrew. He saw the perfectly straight posture. He saw the calm, calculated demeanor despite the metal handcuffs securing his wrists. He recognized the invisible mark of a fellow service member. "Son," Thomas addressed Andrew. "What is your unit type?" Andrew looked at the old Marine. He saw the faded red cap. He felt a sudden surge of hope. Finally, someone in the room understood the visual language of survival. "I am an active duty operator," Andrew replied loudly and clearly. "He is a specialized military asset. He just alerted on that bin." Thomas turned completely pale. The healthy color drained rapidly from his weathered face. He looked back at Max. He studied the statue-like pose again. "Dear God," Thomas whispered to himself. He turned to face the crowded diner. He raised both of his hands high in the air. "Everyone, stop exactly what you are doing right now. Do not move. Do not panic." The patrons looked at the old man in total confusion. A few people paused with coffee cups halfway to their mouths. "That dog is not misbehaving." Thomas projected his voice to reach every single corner of the noisy room. "That is a highly trained military working dog. I served with them in combat zones. I know that exact posture. He is trained to detect explosives. He is sitting on a live bomb alert." The heavy words hung in the air for a terrible second. The collective realization washed over the crowd. The quiet diner transformed instantly. Disbelief vanished. Raw terror took its place. "A bomb?" the young mother in the front booth screamed. She grabbed her child and pulled him tightly against her chest. "Are you crazy?" Henderson yelled. His voice shook violently. "It is just a trash can." "Look at the animal," Thomas pointed again. "He will not break his position. He found an improvised explosive device. If we start running and screaming, the vibrations might trigger it. If someone uses a cell phone, a radio signal might trigger it. We need to evacuate this building slowly and calmly." Officer Miller froze completely. His heavy grip on Andrew's arm disappeared. He stared down at the gray plastic trash bin located just 3 feet away from his own boots. The aggressive arrogance drained entirely from his face. Raw, unfiltered fear replaced it. He realized he had spent the last 10 minutes picking a petty fight right next to a lethal device. He realized he had ignored direct, factual warnings from a trained professional. "You," Miller stammers, looking slowly back at Andrew. "You were serious?" Andrew turned his body. He faced the terrified local officer. The power dynamic in the room shifted instantly and permanently. Andrew was no longer a civilian suspect. He became the highest tactical authority in the building. "Take these cuffs off me right now," Andrew commanded. His voice held zero anger. It held only cold, absolute authority. Miller fumbled frantically with his black utility belt. His hands shook uncontrollably. He pulled out the small silver key. He dropped it on the tiled floor. He cursed under his breath, bent down quickly, and picked it up with trembling fingers. He inserted the key into the metal cuffs and twisted. The tight jaws finally released. Andrew brought his hands forward. He rubbed his bruised wrists once. He did not waste precious time reprimanding the foolish officer. He immediately took control of the crisis. "Officer," Andrew snapped sharply, breaking Miller out of his frozen shock. "Get outside immediately. Use your car radio. Call the Florida State Police Bomb Squad. Tell them you have a confirmed positive alert on a suspected IED inside a crowded commercial structure. Tell them to bring the heavy perimeter team." Miller nodded dumbly. He backed away from the trash bin carefully. He turned and ran out the front glass doors to reach his patrol car. Andrew turned to Thomas. "Marine, I need you to guide the back half of the restaurant out through the rear kitchen doors. Keep them calm. Keep them moving. No running. No sudden loud noises." "On it," Thomas said firmly. The old veteran moved with surprising speed, directing the panicked customers toward the safety of the back alley. Andrew looked at Henderson. The manager leaned against the counter, looking close to fainting. "Open the front doors wide. Prop them open with chairs. Do not let them swing shut. Then get out of here." Henderson scrambled to obey. He grabbed 2 heavy wooden chairs and wedged them against the double glass doors, leaving the exit wide open. He then sprinted across the parking lot. Andrew walked slowly back toward Max. The dog still sat perfectly still. He had not moved a single inch during the chaos. Andrew knelt down a few feet away from his partner. "Good boy, Max," Andrew whispered softly. The customers near the front began to file out the doors. They walked in a hurried, terrified shuffle. Some cried openly, some prayed silently. They gave the trash bin a very wide berth. They looked at Andrew and the dog with newfound awe and deep gratitude. The diner emptied rapidly. Soon, only Andrew and Max remained near the front entrance. The silence returned to the restaurant, but it felt thick and heavy with impending danger. Andrew watched the plastic bin. He calculated the blast variables in his head. He waited for the professional technicians to arrive. He held the silent line. The wail of multiple sirens tore through the heavy Florida heat. A convoy of black and white state police SUVs swarmed the Sunshine Diner parking lot. Behind them came the heavy, armored truck of the Explosive Ordnance Disposal Unit. Dust kicked up from the dry asphalt as the heavy vehicles braked hard. Doors flew open instantly. Heavily armed state troopers poured out and immediately secured a wide perimeter. They shouted clear orders, pushing the evacuated diner patrons much further back toward the distant tree line. Andrew stood just outside the open front doors of the diner. Max sat perfectly still by his left leg. The dog kept his eyes locked on the gray plastic bin inside. Andrew watched a man in dark blue tactical gear jog toward him. The man wore a heavy combat helmet and carried a specialized communication radio on his chest. "I am Captain Harris, State Police Bomb Squad," the man said quickly. He looked at Andrew, then down at the German Shepherd. "Dispatch said we have a military working dog alert on a suspected improvised explosive device." "That is correct, Captain," Andrew replied. He pointed a steady finger toward the open doors. "The target is the gray plastic trash bin. It sits exactly 3 feet inside the main entrance, to the right. My dog gave a confirmed positive alert for explosive chemical compounds 15 minutes ago. He has not broken position since I released him." Harris nodded. He respected the concise, professional briefing. He recognized another tactical operator immediately. "Are there any civilians left inside?" "Negative," Andrew stated clearly. "The building is completely clear. The rear exit is secure. The front doors are propped open to allow your team immediate access." Harris turned to his own men. He began barking technical orders. 2 technicians immediately started pulling heavy Kevlar bomb suits from the back of the armored truck. Another operator deployed a small, tracked robot from a side compartment. Andrew stepped back to give the professionals room to work. He gave Max a short command, leading the dog away from the immediate blast zone. They walked toward the outer edge of the police barricade. As they walked, Andrew noticed Officer Miller. The local cop sat heavily on the front steel bumper of his white patrol car. Miller looked completely broken. He stared blankly at the hot asphalt between his black boots. The arrogant swagger had vanished entirely. His hands trembled violently. He finally realized his stubborn pride nearly cost him his own life, along with the lives of 50 innocent civilians. Andrew felt absolutely no pity for the man. Arrogance in uniform always creates deadly vulnerabilities. Andrew walked right past him without saying a single word. People often build their daily lives around a fragile illusion of safety, trusting that comfortable routines will naturally protect them from sudden violence. They forget that chaos only needs one quiet corner to hide in. The terrified patrons standing behind the yellow police tape now understood this harsh reality. They watched the diner with wide, fearful eyes. Thomas, the old Marine, stood at the front of the crowd. He kept the civilians calm, explaining the bomb squad procedures to stop a panic. A heavy silence fell over the parking lot. The loud sirens had stopped. The flashing red and blue lights painted the faces of the anxious crowd. The bomb robot rolled slowly on its tracks toward the open diner doors. Its camera eye swiveled left and right. The mechanical arm extended forward. Captain Harris stood behind a mobile ballistic shield, staring intensely at a small video monitor. Andrew stood near him, watching the feed. "Talk to me," Harris ordered into his radio headset. The technician operating the robot replied. The voice crackled over the external speaker. "The robot is at the target. I am getting a visual inside the bin. I am moving the top layer of trash very carefully." A tense minute passed. The only sound was the low hum of the idling police vehicles. "Confirmed," the technician's voice broke the silence. The tone sounded incredibly tight. "We have a live device. It is a complex pipe bomb variant. I see multiple thick PVC tubes packed with metal shrapnel. Heavy wiring connects them. I see a digital timer module." Harris gripped the edge of the blast shield hard. "What is the time frame?" "The display is active," the technician reported. "We have less than 8 minutes until detonation." "Pull the robot back," Harris ordered immediately. "Send in Williams with the water disruptor. Move fast." A technician wearing a massive, thick green bomb suit waddled awkwardly toward the diner. He carried a specialized water cannon disruptor designed to blast apart the firing mechanism before the bomb could complete its circuit. Every step he took looked agonizingly slow under the crushing 80-pound weight of the protective armor. Andrew placed a steady hand on Max's head. The dog leaned slightly against his leg. The heat index climbed, but Andrew felt a cold sweat form on the back of his neck. 8 minutes left absolutely no margin for error. If the bomber used a secondary trigger or an anti-tamper switch, the technician would not survive, despite the heavy suit. The blast would gut the entire front half of the diner and send lethal glass flying across the parking lot. The suited technician disappeared into the dark doorway. "He is at the target," Harris muttered, his eyes glued to the robot's camera feed monitoring the area. "He is setting the disruptor." Andrew watched the digital clock on Harris's monitor. 5 minutes. 4 minutes. The silence stretched the passing seconds into hours. The crowd behind the barricade stopped whispering entirely. Even the wind seemed to die down. "Disruptor is placed and armed," the voice crackled over the radio. "I am falling back to minimum safe distance." The technician in the green suit reappeared in the doorway. He walked away from the bin, moving as fast as the heavy armor allowed. He reached the thick corner of the brick building and took hard cover. "Clear to fire," Harris announced. "Firing in 3, 2, 1. A sharp, loud crack echoed across the parking lot. It did not sound like a massive explosion. It sounded like a heavy rifle shot. The water disruptor fired a high-pressure jet of water directly into the bomb circuitry, instantly shattering the electrical components before they could trigger the main charge. Harris stared intently at the monitor. He waited for the dust to settle inside the diner. He needed absolute confirmation. "Target is neutralized," the technician finally reported. "The firing mechanism is completely destroyed. The main charge is intact but totally inert. We are safe. The building is secure." A massive, collective sigh of relief washed over the entire police line. Several armed officers dropped their tight shoulders. Captain Harris wiped a thick layer of sweat from his forehead. He turned to Andrew and extended his right hand. "Your dog just saved a lot of lives today," Harris said with deep respect. Andrew shook the captain's hand firmly. "He is a good soldier." The immediate crisis had passed, but the real aftermath was just beginning. The wail of the sirens faded into a distant memory, replaced by the chaotic chatter of police radios and the heavy boots of the forensic team. The echo of the water disruptor faded across the hot asphalt. A heavy, collective exhale escaped the crowd behind the yellow police tape. The immediate threat no longer existed. The digital timer was shattered. The deadly shrapnel remained contained inside the cracked plastic pipes. Captain Harris removed his heavy tactical helmet and wiped a thick layer of sweat from his forehead. He signaled his team to move in and secure the inert materials for forensic analysis. Andrew watched the state police operate. They moved with practiced efficiency. They cataloged every piece of the broken device. They photographed the gray trash bin from multiple angles. 2 technicians in protective gear carefully lifted the shattered pipe bomb components and placed them into a heavy containment vessel. Max sat quietly by Andrew's side. The German Shepherd's ears relaxed. The intense, rigid posture melted away. The dog leaned his heavy body against Andrew's leg, seeking the familiar comfort of his handler after completing a high-stress mission. Andrew reached down and scratched Max behind the ears, feeling the coarse fur between his fingers. "Good boy," Andrew said softly. Mission accomplished. A black SUV with municipal plates pulled into the parking lot. The vehicle bypassed the state police barricade and parked abruptly near the diner entrance. A tall, older man with silver hair and a crisp white shirt stepped out. The gold stars on his collar identified him as the local chief of police. He looked furious. He surveyed the scene, taking in the bomb squad truck, the shattered glass near the front doors, and the massive crowd of evacuated citizens. Chief Evans walked directly toward Captain Harris. They exchanged a few quick words. Harris pointed toward the diner, then pointed a firm finger directly at Officer Miller. Miller still sat on the front bumper of his patrol car. The arrogant officer looked completely defeated. He stared at his own black boots, unable to meet anyone's gaze. Chief Evans marched over to Miller. The chief did not yell. He did not need to. His quiet anger carried more weight than any shout. "Stand up, Officer Miller," Chief Evans ordered. His voice was cold and sharp. Miller stood up slowly. He looked pale and physically sick. "Chief, I can explain. The suspect was uncooperative. He matched a profile." "Shut your mouth," Evans snapped. "Captain Harris just briefed me." "You ignored a direct bomb threat. You ignored a certified military working dog alert. You illegally handcuffed a federal asset. You endangered the lives of 50 innocent civilians because your ego got bruised." Miller tried to speak, but the words failed him. He swallowed hard. "Hand over your badge," Evans commanded. "Hand over your service weapon. You are suspended effective immediately, pending a full internal and criminal investigation. You will not drive that patrol car. You will walk to the command post and wait for a transport van." Miller slowly unpinned the silver shield from his chest. His hands shook so badly he almost dropped it. He unclipped his duty belt and handed the heavy leather rig to the chief. Without his badge and gun, Miller looked small and insignificant. He turned and walked away, head bowed in total disgrace. People easily forget the face of disaster once the danger passes, shifting their sudden relief toward gratitude. But the true burden of survival remains deeply etched in those who held the line when no one else would. Andrew watched Miller walk away. He felt no vindication. He only felt relief that the officer's ignorance did not cost innocent lives today. The police tape dropped. The state troopers allowed the evacuated patrons to return to the parking lot to collect their vehicles. The crowd did not scatter. Instead, they moved as a single unit toward Andrew and Max. Thomas, the old Marine, led the group. The veteran walked straight up to Andrew and extended a thick, calloused hand. "Son," Thomas said, his voice thick with emotion. "I saw a lot of things in the jungle, but I have never seen discipline like that. Your dog held the line. You held the line. You saved every single soul in that building." Andrew shook the veteran's hand firmly. "We just did our job, sir. Thank you for keeping the civilians calm during the evacuation." A young mother pushed through the crowd. She held her small boy tightly against her hip. Tears streamed down her face. She stopped a few feet away, suddenly hesitant to approach the large dog. Max looked up at her and offered a soft, friendly pant. "Thank you," the woman cried. "He was so close to that trash can earlier. If you had not stopped that officer, if you had just walked away, my baby would be gone." She reached out a trembling hand. Andrew nodded in approval. Max stepped forward gently and nudged his wet nose against the woman's palm. The dog absorbed her frantic pets with calm grace. He understood the difference between a threat and a frightened civilian perfectly. Mr. Henderson, the diner manager, stood at the back of the crowd. He looked deeply ashamed. He rubbed the back of his neck and finally stepped forward. "I am sorry," Henderson said loudly, making sure everyone heard him. "I judged you based on how you looked. I treated you like garbage while you were trying to save my life and my business. I was completely wrong." "You were protecting your establishment," Andrew replied calmly. "Next time, just listen to the warnings before making a final judgment." Captain Harris walked over and handed Andrew his military identification and driver license. "The area is completely secure. We will handle the investigation from here. You are free to go, Andrew. Enjoy the rest of your leave. And buy that dog a giant steak." "I plan to." Andrew smiled slightly. The crowd parted, creating a wide path for the two heroes. They clapped. Some cheered loudly. Others simply offered quiet words of profound thanks. Andrew did not seek the attention. He did not want a parade or an award. He only wanted the quiet peace of his cabin near the coast. Andrew gave the leash a gentle tug. "Let us go, Max." The German shepherd fell into step beside his handler. They walked away from the flashing lights, away from the cheering crowd, and away from the shattered diner. They climbed into Andrew's dusty black truck. Max hopped onto the passenger seat and immediately curled into a tight ball. The dog closed his eyes, his breathing slowing down to a steady, peaceful rhythm. Andrew started the engine and pulled out onto the highway. The mission was over. The silent watch continued. The story of Andrew and Max is a powerful reminder that true heroes do not always arrive with flashing lights, and courage is often found in quiet discipline. As the narrator, I am deeply moved by Andrew's incredible restraint. He faced public humiliation and unjust treatment, yet he prioritized the safety of absolute strangers over his own personal pride. It teaches us a vital lesson. We must always look beyond outward appearances and listen carefully before we let prejudice dictate our actions. The profound silence of a trained service dog and the unwavering stillness of a dedicated soldier saved dozens of innocent lives that day. May God bless the brave men, women, and animals who stand as our silent guardians, protecting our daily peace while we remain completely unaware of the hidden dangers they face. If you are thankful for their unwavering service and incredible sacrifice, please comment Amen below. If this incredible story of duty and the unbreakable bond between a man and his dog inspired you, please share it with your friends and family. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And do not forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that touch the heart.